and welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. This is my little platform where I turn struggling math students into maths masters. And yeah, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification button if you want to know when I post any new videos. I also have created playlists with specific topics that you can find so that it's easy for you to navigate and find videos on this channel because I make for various grades. Please navigate to the playlist section if you want to know what videos I've made, what grades I've created videos for, and what topics if you are looking for a specific topic. Right, that being said, in this video, I am going to start off explaining the concepts of geometry, and I'm going to be starting by looking at parallel lines, which includes co-interior angles, alternate angles, and corresponding angles. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a good and confident grasp on these topics. So without further ado, let's jump in. All right, so this is your lesson on geometry parallel lines, and we'll, like I always do, start right at the very beginning and really just defining what parallel lines are. Okay, so firstly, it's important that you understand that parallel lines are lines that are the same distance apart from each other throughout the lengths of those lines. Okay, so in other words, if I measure the distance between this, which is 2 meters, it has to be the distance between those lines throughout the lengths of the lines. So that what it means that when we say that lines are parallel. Okay, also lines do not have to be the same length in order to be the same distance apart. So these lines are still parallel, but even though that these lines are not necessarily the same length. Okay, also the way that they indicate that lines are parallel is through using these arrows. Okay, so whenever you see those arrows, you'll know that the lines that have the arrow, so all three of these are marked with the same arrow. Therefore, all three of these lines are the same distance apart from each other. Okay, all right, so now that we understand what parallel lines are, now we can actually move into learning about the angles between parallel lines. Now, I will say that there's two important things I want you to take note for this lesson. And the first thing is that I am going to divide this into 3 sections because there's 3 types of angles that are affected by parallel lines. Then secondly, I want to emphasize the importance in geometry that whenever you are giving answers, you have to give reasons for those answers. Okay, so you will see throughout this lesson and all the geometry videos I make going ahead, you will see that I will always give the reason, but I will always give the calculation or give the answer, but then make sure that I explain to the teacher how I got to that answer by giving the reason. Okay, if you don't understand what I mean just yet, don't worry, you'll see after this lesson, it will all make sense. So we're looking at 3 different types of angles that gets affected by parallel lines, and it's alternate angles, co-interior angles, and corresponding angles. And I'm going to explain each of them to you in detail so that you actually understand it, and then at the end I will do an example with all of them. Okay, so first let's have a look at alternate angles. So what does alternate angles say? So firstly, it's important to note that these angles don't exist if there's no parallel lines. Okay, so the prerequisite for this specific content that we're going to be doing today is that there has to be parallel lines. Okay, so the way I've divided each section is that I'm going to give you the rule and then I'm going to show you how the rule is applied. Okay, so the first rule is alternate angles. So what does that mean? That means that if I have 2 lines that are parallel to each other, so AB and CD are parallel to each other because these arrows indicate that, and therefore we know that these are the same distance apart throughout. However, when you have a line going through both of these, right, touching or going through both of these parallel lines, right, like AD is, then the corners the angles in the corners here will always be equal to each other, right? So in other words, angle A, which is this angle, will then be equal to angle D. Okay, so a nice way to see it, and you'll see I added it in brackets here, is that you either look for Z or for an N. Okay, so in this case you see the Z or you can see the N, whichever one. And the corners angles are always exactly the same if the lines are parallel. Okay, so now that we understand what alternate angles are, let's look at an example. So this is what it would look like in a test, okay, where they will say, give with reasons the value of x. So if I look at this question now, right, I have parallel lines. AB is parallel to CD. I have a line that is cutting through these two, which means I have two corners, right? So if I want to calculate x, I know I need to look for the z. And you see there we have the z or the n, and that means that the angles in the corners are equal to each other. So that means that angle x is then equal to 40, because we know based on the alternate rule that the angles in the corners are equal to each other. So if this one is 40, then x also has to be 40. And when we have x is equal to 40 now, remember, this is now my answer, but I have to give the reason. So the reason will be written as follows. You'll say, I used alternate angles to find this, and in the alternate angles, you have to show which lines you used as the parallel lines. So alternate angles, which shares the z, and that's how you will write it. And then you'll say which line, parallel lines made the z, would be the AB, which is parallel to CD. So in order for you to get full marks for this question, you have to give the answer and the reason as well as the parallel lines. Okay, so that's alternate angles. Try and remember the N and the angles in between that are in the corners of the N or the Z. Right? That's number one. Let's have a look at the second one now. Now we have corresponding angles. Now, if I look at corresponding angles, we are going to look at F. And again, I want to emphasize that none of these angles exist unless I have parallel lines. Okay, so let's have a look at the rule. The rule says the following. If I have parallel lines, right, and I have a line going through them, then the angles that are underneath sort of the lines of the F are equal to each other. So in this case, angle A would be equal to angle E, and we will see that it's an F that's being made here, right? Follow my mouse. You see the F there? Sorry, that's the F there. And this is the angle underneath in the corner of the F, and this one is in the corner of F, and these two are equal to each other. Okay, so that's what we call corresponding angles if we see the F. Okay, so now let's see how they can ask this. So here's the question, and we go, okay, do you see that, okay, before I show you that, the question is to find x giving reasons, okay? So here's x and here's 40 degrees. So what you need to see is there's parallel lines, which is AB is parallel to CD, and the x and 40 is both underneath the lines or in the corners of the F. Okay, so that means that these two angles are equal to each other. So if I have the F and I have the parallel lines and I have the angles underneath, then I can actually say that x would be equal to 40. How do I know this? I give the reason, corresponding angles, and that's how you would write it. But because corresponding angles includes the parallel lines, I have to list and give the parallel lines as well. So AB is parallel to CD. Okay, so let's do the third one now. So the third one is called co-interior angles. Now guys, I know the sort of, when we get to the third one, you're like, I don't know if I'm going to remember this. The idea is not that you necessarily remember it on the spot now, but the more questions you do and the more practicing that you get, you'll see that this will become easy. And this is also something that you will take into your later years, into higher years and higher grades. So yeah, I would encourage you to first, just in this video, make sure that you understand it, and then you can actually implement it. Okay, so let's have a look at what does co-interior's rule say. So co-interior's got a little bit different rule based on what we've learned from alternate angles and corresponding angles. And what does this say? It says that if I've got parallel lines and I've got a line that goes through, then the two angles on the inside of the two parallel lines, right? So you see this is the parallel lines, this angle's on the inside, this angle's on the inside, and here's a line in between. These two angles are supplementary. So supplementary means they add up to 180 degrees. So angle A plus angle E is then equal to 180. That is our co-interior angles rule. So let's see how we could apply this in an example. So this is what a question would look like. And if you have a look here, you see that I've got parallel lines. AB is parallel to CD by the arrows. I see that I have a line going in between, and then I've got two lines on the inside of the parallel lines. And these two must add up to 180. So if this plus 108 must equal to 180, then obviously 180, right? So do you see the U there? 180 minus 108 will then give you the value of x, right? So co-interior angle says I'm looking for a U, right? Where in between these, the U, the angles that's inside the U must add up to 180. So in this case, to find x, I say 180 minus 108. And my reason for doing this calculation is co-interior angles. And this is how you would write it. You have to study and write the reasons properly. Okay, I will add in the description, I will add the sort of official and allowed reasons, because you cannot sort of abbreviate them shorter than what I've added in this video. Okay, and then I also added the parallel lines. Right, so that means that x is then equal to 72 degrees. Right, so we have now calculated what is the size of that angle. Okay, refresh your memory. When we're looking at alternate angles, we're looking for the Z. When we're looking at corresponding angles, we're looking at for the F. And if we're looking for co-interior angles, we are looking for the U. Okay, also remember that with the Z, the angles are in the corner. With the F, the angles are also in the corner, but underneath. And then with the U, both of the angles are inside. With alternate angles, they are equal to each other. With corresponding angles, they are equal to each other. And then with co-interior angles, they add up to 180. And that is in essence the three important things that you need to know when it comes to parallel lines. Now let's do an exercise where we combine these. Okay, so the question says, determine with reasons the values of x and y in each question where applicable. Right, so here we have our first question. Now, if you feel like you already get this, pause this video now and try and get to this answer by yourself. If you feel like you still need to sort of be taken through these questions, then stay with me. Otherwise, try and see if you can figure it out first and see if you can see the F, if you can see the Z, if you can see the U before I actually work through this. Okay, so I'm going to work through this and I'm going to show you. So firstly, if we have a look at this, I see that I need to find x and I need to find y. And I'm always looking at what is being given to me. So if I look, this 87 is given. So I see many letters here. I see Z, I see F, and I see U. But I want to find one that where the one of those angles are actually given. I actually have one of the angles, right? And in this case, it's the F, because you see, if I have the F, then I've got the angle underneath, which is 87, and I've got x, right? So that means with corresponding angles with the F, that these angles are equal to each other. Therefore, x is equal to 87. Again, what must we do? We add our reason, corresponding angles, and here AB is parallel to CD. Okay, now we have to find y. So do you see we now know that x is 87. So this is 87 and this is 87. So if I look at this now, do you see that between x and y I also have a z, right? So that means that angle x and angle y must be equal to each other, okay? So that means that y is also equal to 87 because y is equal to x. And what is our reason? Alternate angles. With what are our parallel lines? AB is parallel to CD. So do you see how they can combine these questions and combine where you have to apply alternate, corresponding, and co-interior angles? Okay, so that was our first question. Let's try our second example before I give you an exercise to attempt on your own. And again, if you want to, feel free to pause here and see what you can actually find. So in this case now, I again look and I see, okay, they want me to find x, y, and z, right? I have to look for a z, I have to look for n, or I have to look for u. So I always say, like, try and find the angles alphabetically. So in this case, try and find x first and then y. It won't always work like that, but it's easier for you to sort of work your way through a question. So if I look at this, you'll see x and the 41, this is the angle that's given. So if I look at the relationship between x and 41, do you see that it makes a z? That means that x must equal to 41 as well because of alternate angles, and AC and DF are the parallel lines that are used for this alternate angles. Okay, so just take a moment to make sure that you see that. Second question. Now I want to find y. Okay, so again, I look at what do I already have. I've got the 41 and I need to find y. What is the relationship between what I have and what do I need to figure out? The f, right? So that means that y is then equal to 41 because both of these angles are underneath the lines of the f, and the f has parallel lines. But now do you notice that we used different parallel lines in this one? Okay, so again, it's corresponding angles because we use the f, but the parallel lines now are DF is parallel to GI. Okay, one more. Let's have a look at Z. Z is now in relation to, and here for Z we can have multiple answers. Okay, so if you look here, do you see that Z and X make the F? Okay, so here's your F, okay, and both of these are underneath. So Z can equal to 41 because of corresponding angles. But Z can also equal to 41 because of alternate angles with Y. So there might be many times where you are actually able to find the answer in more than one way. On your teacher's memo, they will always show all the options. So whichever one you see, you can use. You don't necessarily have to find a specific one. Okay, so in this case, I used the Z, and so Z and Y is then equal to each other. So that means Z is also equal to 41. And the reason I use the Z is alternate angles, and now the parallel lines are DF is parallel to GI. Okay. All right, so that's the examples, and now I want to give you an exercise to see, and if you can try on your own. Okay, so do this exercise. Okay, here's your 3 questions. Pause the video, try and do all 3 with all the answers for the variables and the reasons, and then unpause the video and I will give you the answers and we can mark it together. Okay. All right, so I hope you feel confident about your answers, and I hope you sort of feel like you sort of knew what it is that you were doing. So I'm going to work through the answers with you now. I want to recommend to you guys that don't just watch this video and hope you understand. You actually have to practice. That's when you start, where your brain starts remembering this. So I would really suggest, please make sure that you try the questions first before you look at the answers. Okay, so let's have a look here. Your first answer should have been x is equal to 26, and you would have seen this was an easy one, that it makes a z, so our reason is alternate angles, and the parallel lines is AB is parallel to CD. Okay, so make a tick on the angles and your tick on your reason. just so that you can make sure that you can mark it. And if you didn't get it like this, if you didn't get this answer, please actually write down your corrections so that when you come back to this, you can actually see where you went wrong so that you don't repeat the mistake. Let's look at number 2. Okay, so number 2, I'm going to try and do x first. You see that x and 142 make the u, okay? And we know that inside the u, I have to have angles that add up to 180. So x is then equal to 180 minus 142. What's my reason? Co-interior angles, because AB is parallel to CD. Therefore, x is equal to 38 degrees. So we know that the size of this angle is now 38. Now, do you see that x and z actually makes the z, the alternate z, right? And y makes the f with x. So I'll go, because I want to go alphabetically, I'll go y first, and I'll say y is equal to x. Y, therefore, if x is 38, then y is also equal to 38. And the reason there is corresponding angles, and then I list what my parallel lines are there. AB is parallel to CD. Next one, Z is equal to 38 as well. Why? Because of alternate angles. Okay, do you see that? Now, if you've covered all the other geometry rules, you could have also seen that this could have been angles on a straight line or vertically opposite angles, but I'm just trying to, for the sake of this video and for you to understand this, just sticking to the rules that I've taught you in this video. Okay, last one. I hope you ticked what you got right and you made your corrections for what you got wrong. Okay, now the last one. So let's have a look here. I've got 46 and x, and what letter do you see being made there? You see that's the F. You see, follow my mouse, that's the F. Okay, and these angles are underneath the lines of the F. So that would be x is then equal to 46. Because it's a F, it's corresponding angles, and what are my parallel lines? AC is parallel to BD. Doesn't matter in what order you put the parallel lines. No, if you said BD is parallel to AC, you would have also gotten the marks. Okay, next one. Y is equal to 134. So let's see why that is. Okay, here it's angles on a straight line. So do you see this is now where we apply your other geometry rule. So you see that these angles here on this line, right? These angles, Y and 46, all form part of the angles on a straight line. So that means this is equal to 134. Why? Because these two angles are on a straight line. So this is 180 minus 46, and that's how I got the Y. Okay, don't worry, I will still make a video on angles of a straight line, so don't panic if you didn't quite get this one. Okay, but then do you see that with Z and Y make a Z? Okay, so it's also alternate angles. Therefore, Z is also equal to 134. And the reason there would be alternate angles because AC is parallel to BD. And that is parallel lines. All right, so there's that video. I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, I'd appreciate you giving it a thumbs up. And if you have any questions, in the comment section below. I also will be adding worksheets for you to actually practice with memos in the description box once my platform that I'm currently working on has been set up, and then I will share it with you. So keep an eye out on the communication page on my YouTube channel to know when specific worksheets will be available to you. And then, yeah, I will see you then in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this video. And yeah, I do encourage you to watch. If you are struggling with algebra, I encourage you to watch the videos in order. The same with geometry, always watch my videos in order, because you'll see that I always sort of refer back. I will teach something and then I will refer back to it, or I'll say, okay, in the next video, I'm going to extend on that. So I do encourage you to sort of really go with the flow of how I've ordered the videos. Right, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.